Walk with me through the cellar door. A storm is coming, Frances. A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Oh, welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us for another amazing episode. Tonight, we have a special guest, I think. It's a special guest. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. Let me try and bring him in here. Let's see. Oh, do we have a special guest?
Squeal. Oh, those are my hearing aids again. It's always back from the microphone action. I get the feedback.
There you go.
I am Hansel the engineer. I love the new graphics that makes everything definitely feel like it's almost the end of 2019.
Yeah. And the best part about this whole video is that if you look right behind there, you can see Hannah's little evil Slipknot head hanging in the background.
Yeah,
just like in the old videos.
I have the devil horn guy. Yeah, I classed it this time. I threw the high quality still life image that my wife took of the deer skull, and we put the whatever garbage bag monster on the other wall.
Well, there you go. So, folks, it's official. We can officially welcome back Mr. Hanna. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm good. I've been doing hard labor all week and weekend. It's I don't know. I'm still working on the house 2 months in, but it's awesome. It's just really nice to start. I got a new computer. That's one of the reasons why I'm here now is essentially I got a new all-in-one PC that allows me to not be an unintentional stutterer as far as the audio connection and everything I used to have is. It was so bad for that old computer I had. It was like 6 or 7 years old, and I think it had like, I don't know, 8 gig of RAM, 4 gig of RAM. It just couldn't handle it. So I got a new hardware. Hopefully everything sounds decent, and my weird orange background in my video here won't be too bad. But other than that, I just enjoy being on the net again, because I've been literally absent from everything. I haven't been doing much on any of the social media because I've been concentrating so hard on getting my life put back together as far as moving to the weird state of Ohio, and that's pretty much the way I have to keep it.
Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you back. And I figured what we would do to begin the show is, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what's been going on with you for the last, I don't know, I think it's been like 5 months.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like, at least.
So I moved to a state that doesn't let you buy alcohol from the grocery stores because they're conservative. I don't really understand this. You have to go to the liquor stores to buy liquor, and you can get, they have 42 proof that you can buy in the grocery stores. It's as much as they like. So, the libertarian, don't tread on me, but doggone it, you can't drink that strong stuff unless you go to a special store. So I don't know. It's an interesting experience coming out to Ohio. I got an awesome job, and I have a really enjoyable experience for moving away from my private world and small business. But my father's retired, and he's kind of doing his thing where he's putting all of his bones back together, and just letting him enjoy his twilight. And I'm now in a house built now in 1989, so I have drywall, I have rollback, I have wiring, I have good copper. Everything is nice. All of the things I'm doing now is just cosmetic and putting in a shed in the backyard and everything. I moved directly out of the lower middle class into the absolutely in the middle of the middle class. That's how I describe it. The average age in my neighborhood is like 65. So come election season, when Bernie Sanders gets written on the back of my vehicle, we'll probably see some angry looks, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that's got to be crazy, man. Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do in a conservative town now?
The same thing you do when you put up Hillary Clinton signs in Zealand. But
everybody just walks by me and smiles.
Yeah, but they're thinking, I want to hit him with a car. They do the same thing here. They're just going to be like, oh, look at that nice Michigan boy, Bernie Sanders. He must be a socialist.
Kill him.
And they'll like clutch their children and they'll walk on the other side of the road. I have 2 pit bulls, so they have an excuse not to come anywhere near my house. But
Nice.
other than that, yeah, I've been cutting down trees. My wife left to the grocery store for like 2 minutes, and I just climbed the pine tree in the front yard and just started cutting it down because I couldn't stand it. So she came home and it was like just before, with the whole tree start. I was about halfway up, and it's just like, this is the moment in the YouTube videos where the person goes, I got this, and then something horrible happens. Yeah. It's right it's when she pulled in the driveway. She was like, oh man, and then the tree just started going down. So I don't know. I'm enjoying the marital bliss of being a homeowner. That's pretty much what I got.
Oh. And being home.
Huh?
And being home. You was killing yourself in Grand Rapids.
Yeah. 6:30 to 5 is when I'm working now, but it's Monday through Friday, and it's insane. My daughters are like, Daddy's home 2 days. What is happening? So
yeah, nice. That's crazy. That is crazy. And that's good for your family life though, man. Like that's good to hear that you're able to get back to that
work-life balance.
Yeah. 7 to 7, 7 days a week. Hitting that 80 hours is it gets you after a while.
I can imagine. Well, welcome back to the show. We have a new format, as you can see. We changed a little bit while we were gone. We had a little bit of help from Boyce from Mindful Skeptics podcast. And no, I've not said the wrong name for the podcast in 3 months now.
It's been a while.
Go ahead. Is that the running thing? You were saying it incorrectly.
It was the mindless. It was Mindless Skeptics podcast. I was like, nice.
Thanks, bro. They're gonna have negative viewers next week. People are gonna be like sending bombs to your email.
Yeah.
What, email bombs?
Well, we can. The best part about this is we could tell them where to direct their emails at, right?
Just
we can.
Who's taking it then?
It's going to be
your email, isn't it?
No, it's going to be Buddy the Lumberjack at gmail.com.
A new email address.
I am okay with this.
You know what that means though? This is like one of those things like when John Oliver used to say like a random URL, they had to buy it. You remember that? So they had hornywalrus.com. He had to buy it.
Horny Walrus.
Yeah,
I want that website.
I do remember that.
Because just upload random audio clips just to see if people would be like, is that actually what a horny walrus sounds like?
Actually,
they click play and
either that or it was Conan. It might have been Conan when they bought hornywalrus.com or whatever. Yeah, it was because he had a horny like dude in a costume and a walrus or whatever. Anyways, yeah, that's one of those things. So we now have to race to the Gmails. Oh, it's gone.
I mean, it's wide open for us though.
That's been an interesting thing. I've had to like rename all of my emails and everything. I'm like, so now I'm a stutter on Gmail. I'm Chris Hanna. Well, that's what my Twitter handle was. So it is maybe. I don't know if it still exists. I haven't gone on Twitter in so long that they may have just like I don't know, whatever they do to kill your deactivate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, so what's nice is we're now doing this different stream. It's a little different. This is kind of going back to what we used to do, right, man? We used to do video. This is so much simpler, though. So I'm kind of excited. We're going to test some things out. Maybe we'll buy the service. Maybe we'll use the free one. But I can tell you what, Jameson is a sponsor of tonight's show. Well, you missed out.
That's up there.
Yeah, well, I go to Wisconsin almost every week, right?
That's crazy.
Their alcohol is so much cheaper there. A half gallon of Jameson is $35.
God damn, a half gallon.
A half gallon.
They probably don't have any sin taxes there, do they?
No, I don't think. I think that's what it is.
Yep.
Anyway, so let's actually go on to the show. So anyway, welcome back, Hanna. Glad you can join us.
I am happy to be here.
And your new nickname for the show is Hansel, the engineer. So we all have nicknames now.
Willkommen, Hansel. We welcome your engineering skills.
So tonight there's a couple things I have on the docket, so we will be continuing our series with analyzing policies, and that'll be the main portion of the show. But I wanted to start out with, and this is kind of funny because this actually came from an email the owner of my company sent to all the employees, right?
Uh-oh.
And no, this is actually not a bad thing per se, right? And even in my size of a company, they have to be somewhat conservative to some extent, right? Most people that own companies feel conservative to me, except for you. You were like an anomaly back there.
Small business is usually a little bit more liberal because they're at the ground level. So like there's a lot of people that are usually at the startup as opposed to people that are getting tax breaks and incentives. So like most of the perks and peaks that you get are when you're at the top of the game. The government gives you a lot of stuff, corporate welfare and everything. So to begin at the bottom, you're looking for the handouts and the things that all these big companies get. You don't get them. So you usually don't think it's too big of a deal when you're looking at, social programs and stuff like that for assistance.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things he sent out is, I guess there's this thing called a Cass Freight Index. And I guess just so if anybody knows me, I work in logistics. So these are the type of things we talk about, on a regular basis, right? And, the idea here is, he sent out this thing where it kind of talks about where the freight index is at, what's going on, how, has Trump's tariffs essentially affected everything, right? And the idea here is I wanted to have a quick conversation about if Trump's tariffs have affected us or not. Because if we go to the report, there's the Cass Index is what you just saw, is the actual report. They actually single out the U.S. trade war with China, right? Because it's kind of a big thing right now. We don't want it to be a big thing, but it is.
Yeah.
And Trump, what does he like to do? He likes to come out and say, hey, I've saved all this money, guys. There's a bunch of money that's been saved. So, my tariffs are doing good for the U.S. But in my industry, the first thing that we look at is what's happening with truckload rates before fuel surcharges, accessorials, and all that. And that's what that report actually analyzes. And they are down 2.5% year over year since October.
That's not a surprise in all reality. I mean, if you think about it, like there's an added cost added to the entirety of transportation when it comes to import and export because there's retaliatory tariffs. So there's an added cost that's been added to the entire infrastructure of any kind of logistics, especially international logistics. But domestic logistics have also experienced some of this because just down the chain. So it's not a big surprise that would be something that would be happening. And also, we're worried about economic overheating. So usually indicators like that, people that are not entirely certain what's going on, that they like in Europe right now, they don't know what's going to happen with Brexit. So there's a lot of people they're actually reducing and holding as much money as they can because they don't know what's coming. That kind of uncertainty reduces investment and all that kind of stuff. So it does all of the indexes and the reports that I've seen are like this. Everybody's saying, it's slowed down a little bit. We're not entirely certain if it's directly like correlation or causation, but it's not a surprise.
Yeah. And that's the idea here, folks. And that's why I wanted to bring this up. And I get that you and I may think this is common sense, right? I mean, we didn't vote for Trump. We never would vote for Trump. I get it,
Well,
but
I think this kind of thing would be happening a little bit, even if there was a Democrat in office, because there is a recession coming. Like, you can't stave it off forever. It might just be a little one, but I mean, I think we're making it a bigger one the way that we're doing things. But like, there would be a downturn coming at some point, even if there's a Democrat.
Yes, but the difference is the tariffs have escalated that to astronomical proportions, and that's the problem. So when you look at those things, and they call it the Trump bump, right? And that's the big key here, right? What does Trump like to tout? He likes to tout that he's increased things. He suggests that the great surge of 2018, which is what he's calling the Trump bump, and it's not him doing cocaine, folks. Because I would at least enjoy that video.
That would at least be a lot more interesting.
He stopped doing that when he stopped hanging out with Epstein.
Oh
No. Well, I mean, I can't even say that he stopped doing other things. Never mind. You know what? Pass.
pass. There we go. Move on from that. PG Showbo, buddy.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, but what it's doing and what they're talking about is how everything has essentially, eroded itself. So if you look at the graph right here, you can actually see where things are steady, and then all of a sudden you see this huge increase, right? So we've seen a shipment increase, which is, again, that's good, especially in my industry, right? For me, this is great. More shipments means more money for us. But the problem becomes is when it doesn't last, when it's unsustainable. So if you watch in the graph, it goes from, the 1.5 to 3.5%, all the way up to 11.5%. And now this report came out, third quarter, by the end of September, they've lost 4.5%. That's crazy. That's a huge swing. Same with if you come down to the shipments and you actually look at the number of shipments per 100, right? You can see the trend go up, and now you're seeing it come back down. And we're at the exact same point we were in Obama's career. So when we talk about, Trump, and we talk about, some of the different things that are happening, right? The big thing here is understanding what does it mean for us? What does it mean for the country? And how do we quantify this for the folks at home? Because, Hannah, you talked about before the show, the conservative area you're living in.
Yeah.
And these conversations at some point are probably going to come up. And you can take these little tidbits and you can just say, well, what about the Trump bump? It looks like, our freight and logistics have gone down. And then when they ask you how you know that, you'd be like, well, I have a friend who works as a 3PL provider. So, he bitches at me all the time about this stuff.
Well, you have to be careful when you have arguments with people on that, and you use very specific things like that, because they'll say, I don't know about that, and I have to go learn about it or something like that. So like one of the biggest areas where you argue with people, especially on something that has to do with national politics, it's an esoteric emotional response. It's arguments from emotion and from personal experience, as opposed to any kind of data driven analysis. Like I always use the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act from 1930, which essentially was it raised import duties insanely, and it's considered one of the largest drivers in the international economic climate that caused the Great Depression. But essentially what it did was it made everything so unbelievably inflated and expensive that essentially all of the markets crashed, because they were looking to drive the protect my stuff, that America first perspective. And they literally even said America first during that time. And so like I like to use those kinds of things, because every once in a while you'll run into a guy who's a conservative and he's also a historian, and he'll know that. But it's interesting to see the kind of rose-colored glasses they use a lot on this kind of thing. I know it's an interesting experience. Like this kind of thing here, talking logistics, it'll be cool. You might have to be specifically in the industry to have that conversation. You know what I mean? Like talk to someone who knows a little bit about what's going on. But if they don't know what it is, like back it up and say like this kind of thing is common to almost every industry right now. There really isn't an industry that isn't seeing market fluctuations. You look at the Dow and you look at things like that. Like there's ups and downs that the larger the peaks and valleys are in short term are usually indicative of the kind of economic uncertainties, which is why the Fed has been raising or dropping interest rates again. Like they only do that when they need to buffer the economy. And so if the economy is doing great, as good as it's ever been, why would we be reducing it unless the Fed is directly acting at the request of the president to make the economy even better come election season, which would be ugly at the least.
Yeah. Go ahead, boys.
And Trump has really complained about the guy he appointed to be in charge of that
until he started reducing rates again, and now he hasn't said a word about it. So
yeah, he bitched because he wouldn't lower it. He's like quantitative easing. He's fucking stupid. Sorry, I said the F word. But, I ruined it.
Explicit.
Dang it. He brings it out of me, man. Oh, God.
Well, your hat says math, not English.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. New name for the show. New name for the episode. Your hat says math, not English.
I will say English is not my forte. I prefer the numbers.
Anyway.
That's hilarious, Hannah. That was a good one.
I've been called weird things my entire life, from like hearing aids, and the cable boy. They call me cable guy because I had hearing aids with cords on them. It's like I've been getting it for a while, so I'm just used to dealing it out as part of a personal response to the universe. And it's fun that a new job, I've been finding people who do like that. So hopefully I won't burn too many bridges.
Do what you can.
There you go.
It's a call order, I know.
You get an email from HR. God damn it.
Not again.
I know. I'm so terrified that I'm just gonna something's gonna come through. I've never had to deal with HR before. It's weird.
Well, there you go. I don't think you have much to worry about, my friend.
Yeah, probably.
So, for the next segment, Buddy brought us an article, and I just have to ask, Buddy, is Canada as bad as the U.S.?
Not quite yet. There's still debate about it. I mean, there are parts of Canada that's good. I mean, we at least didn't vote for Trump, but we've supported two premiers who are kind of like Trump. One of them, the best comparison I have of him is that he's basically what Ted Cruz would be if he weren't so gosh darn socially awkward.
No.
And Ted Cruz being socially awkward, like he looks like he's still the same soggy mattress material though. Like, like you touch his face and your hand comes away and it's wet and you're like, what the heck? So you touch it again, it's like that's the sound it makes. That's Jason Kenney I'm talking about, by the way. Doug Ford is well, we've joked about him and his brother Rob a while. So anyways, yeah, so last week I kind of teased it because I was hoping to touch on it because I wanted to show you guys that Canadians are just like you, like celebrities. They're just like normal people, except with expensive tasting clothes. So in Alberta, there was this great big hubbub. There was this Bill 207. Tanner did put it up. That's actually the bill itself, as it was put forth on May 21st of this year by the newly elected Conservative government. It was a private member's bill, which essentially means that it wasn't put forth by the cabinet specifically. It was brought forward by an individual on the floor. Anyways,
is his name Mr. Williams?
I want to say yes because that name is right there, but I also don't want to say yes because I might be wrong.
I'm just asking because it says Mr. Williams.
I know. It was put forward by an MP who is from rural Alberta, and essentially what Bill 207 is as you can see, it's the Conscience Rights of Healthcare Providers Protection Act. This now I'm sure Americans will recognize some of the language in the bill, but essentially what this bill would be is it would be a protection for doctors who say didn't want to perform things that they objected to on quote unquote conscious grounds or religious beliefs. So anybody from the South will know that is basically just language for if a doctor doesn't want to perform an abortion, they don't have to. If a doctor doesn't want to do anything that goes or treat anybody who's LGBT, they don't have to. If a doctor doesn't want to get involved in a medical assistance in death or euthanasia case, they don't have to because Jesus. And they can just walk away. There will be no repercussions, no sort of penalties, nothing. I think at most what they'll have to do is just provide information. Now, rural Alberta Canada has 1/10 the population of the States and is still a little bit bigger. So the rural parts of our country are rural as F. You can drive for hours without seeing a city, a town, a hamlet, a gas station, anything like that. Only our highways weren't exactly designed to also double as runways in the event that all the planes in the country had to, land at once. So this bill raised a lot of red flags. I actually got pissed off because the Catholic bishop or former Catholic bishop for Calgary's diocese, all of a sudden he started talking about end of life and people choosing to take their own lives and euthanasia and really misrepresenting it because that's what he does. He's a horrible person that way. Fred Henry can go sodomize himself. I censored myself there. Only I didn't actually censor myself because what I said was just as bad, just not, profane. Anyways,
bad words.
this bill got shot down. It's not going to go to debate. It won't get passed. So this means that, say rural, you might only find 1 or 2 doctors. They won't be allowed to say, no, I'm not going to treat you because you're gay. No, you're trans. I'm not going to deal with you. No, you might be 16 and have been raped by someone, and no, I'm not going to perform an abortion on you anyway, or recommend an abortion or anything like that. Even though that's probably the best thing, because even though you might die from this pregnancy, whatever. The reason why I wanted to bring that to the table is because I know in the States, from what I've heard in a lot of the podcasts that come out of there, this is very common in the South, is this language to try to scale back protections for, various healthcares. So again, anybody in the LGBT community, abortion protections, medical assistance in dying. And what did actually really infuriate me is because at the time that this really came to the table or to the forefront of everybody's, news feeds, a friend of mine, his father-in-law was actually going through the process of medical assistance in death. And I was talking to this friend about it. He was basically saying, yeah, this is absolutely horrible. And it makes me sick that they would target people like this and misrepresent everything about this, because when you reach the point in your life where your quality of life is so low, like, at what point are you allowed to say, you know what? I no longer feel that my life is worth living to me. I can't experience anything. I have absolutely no autonomy, no dignity whatsoever. I would like to take whatever dignity I have and make that decision. And basically, it takes away that choice. However, the good news is that it didn't get passed. It got taken down, whatever. The only other issue going on is that this appears to maybe be a smokescreen for the fact that Jason Kenney recently pushed through Bill 22, which resulted in the firing of an ethics commissioner who happened to be investigating the UCP and Jason Kenney's election in the party itself. But that's just a little bit of speculation. So, anyways, Canada, we're not necessarily as bad, but we can still. There's still time.
Conservatives peacock no matter where they are, and that's exactly what it is. That's pandering to their voting base. I mean, you're deciding over a totalitarian, emotionless edict from the sky versus empathy for people near the end of their lives, or empathy for people who are transitioning in probably what is more difficult than a lot of things that a regular person ever has to go through in their entire life. Ever. Like, it's a lack of empathy and it's peacocking for their voter base. Like, the same thing happens here. I guess that wonderful virus has spread to what we think of as our nice but a little bit quirky brother to the north.
But quirky bigger brother, yeah. Don't forget.
He keeps talking about Her Majesty and all this difference thing. I don't know about that, man.
Him, hup, and all of that. Bow down to the Queen, and I don't mean Beyonce.
There's a really cool thing they've been talking about, like whether or not the Queen will abolish the monarchy after Queen Elizabeth II passes, and I think that's pretty cool. There's a lot of people in England that have been like, "Hey, let's talk about this."
I mean, it would make sense because at this point, really, they don't do much. The royal family doesn't do much except for make tabloid news and hold wealth and all of that. I mean, maybe there's some strategy, but
talk about high-profile socialists. I mean, totally living off the government's dime. What a bunch of mooches.
I know, and the amount of money it takes for just to get them from point A to point B, all of their support. I mean, the fact that they never raise their own kids, they pay somebody else to do it. Sorry, they pay multiple somebody else's to do it.
To me, the royal family is just like the Kardashians. They're just Kardashians. They have no skill set whatsoever. They're showed up. They just get paid to be who they are just famous for the sake of fame, because they're famous for having, control for, I don't know, a couple of eons now.
Don't take the dream of being famous for the sake of being famous away from me, boys.
Well, you can do what Kim did, and I'm sure you'll be famous.
Release a sex tape?
With Ray J specifically.
Instead of comparing the Queen to the Kardashians, I like to keep it more towards like the Flyers mascot, Gritty, that crazy hairball monster on the ice. Like that's let's call the people who think they're amazingly monarchic like let's call them what they really are, just big fuzzy mascots. I think that's a little bit better.
Yeah, but Gritty's awesome. So I don't know if that's a good comparison.
Maybe.
It's still hilarious. If you don't watch hockey, you have no idea what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah, just look up Gritty and then prepare your starfish for some.
I consider him like Gonzo if you're taking acid on ice.
Yeah, he's totally methed out. That's what I see.
Gonzo the Great.
He just looks. It's like, yeah. What was the monster from the
Animal.
Animal. Yeah, methed out animal. That's what I see when I see Gritty
on ice.
So animal.
And add on ice. It's better than any Disney on ice I've ever seen.
Damn.
So Tanner, what's going on, buddy? You got really quiet there.
I did.
He's researching Frozen 2 and how he's going to sing along in the next episode.
No, I don't know. Have you seen it yet?
My wife and daughter went and they did the photo shoot in front of the things. I stayed home with the 1.5-year-old because why take a 1.5-year-old to a movie theater? I would be in the hallway
in that theater.
Oh no! There's no level of annoyance that you can possibly get for a Frozen that will supersede the movie itself. But one of the parents would be in the hallway letting the 1.5-year-old run around. So I'm not going to pay like $20 to stare at advertisement in a hallway with popcorn crumbs everywhere.
But then, how can unnecessarily wealthy people hoard your money? How can a multi-billion-dollar corporation hold on to your $20 if you don't spend that money to go stand and miss a movie?
Don't get me started on the giantness. Everybody seems to be rushing hand over foot for Disney Plus. I'll pass.
Disney Plus and Thrust, am I right, gents? Huh? Yeah. No.
Why are you against Disney Plus? Now we're gonna tangent a minute. Why are you against Disney Plus?
I don't need any more. I don't need any more subscription services. I got the one. I don't even use it that much. So I don't watch a whole lot of TV. But like, I've never been a big fan of a lot of Disney movies. Like they've definitely picked up stuff that's much more adult now. But in all reality, like there's not a whole lot of Disney stuff that I've been a major fan of. When they picked all the Fox Searchlight pictures and all that kind of stuff up for their recent purchase, there's a lot more in there. But I don't know. It's pretty much what it is. It's like you guys watched Mandalorian, and I was like, it's cool. I mean, I don't know. Maybe one day I'll see it. It's not gonna
go see it. If not for Werner Herzog,
with his
lightsaber penis.
Yeah. Here we go.
Oh man, you just killed my PG rating.
Boys did that already. It was PG-13, and I said a technically not dirty word that they can tell to 5-year-olds, get off my back.
All right. Anyway, so moving on from your penis jokes there, buddy, and your lowbrow stuff. Let's talk about something different. So we actually are going to do a science segment, folks, this week.
Yeah.
There was an article that my sister shared with me talking about an Ebola vaccine that was approved for Europe. And that's crazy, right? I mean, how long have third world countries struggled with it?
A minute,
yeah.
Yep.
I know at the beginning of the month, there was one of the largest Ebola outbreaks on recorded history in the Congo. But wow, you didn't really hear much about it, did you?
No.
It's almost like you couldn't use it for fear-mongering.
Unless American doctors are there and then bringing the cases back to the U.S., the people in the U.S. just simply don't care. They really don't. It's one of the reasons why the people in other countries and when people travel abroad, they genuinely look down on people that come from the U.S. to travel the world. It's just like, you guys don't pay attention to anything. I don't know. It's like if you listen to the BBC and you listen to BBC on satellite radio or anything like that, like you get world news. If you listen to most of the news stations, even in NPR in the United States, you get domestic. It rarely gets its way out there. And I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things that you try to follow it and you do the best you can, but you actively have to look for world news in the United States. You have to search for it. It's sad.
Yeah. And that was, that was what was exciting about this article is they're talking about an actual vaccine. It's been approved. It's something that can be used in places like the Congo, like you just, talk about. And I don't know what this is going to cost, right? Because they don't really talk about this. But finally, the World Health Organization has pre-qualified for this for global agencies to start using. And so, I know you don't like BoJack Horseman, but, on BoJack Horseman, they actually talk about, Doctors Without Borders, right? And, one of the main characters goes out to see if she has the stuff to help make it work in other countries. And bringing it all back to this Ebola virus is kind of funny because they reference something like that in the show early on. And it's just kind of funny because here we have a new vaccine that's going to come out that will essentially help eradicate it. And this kind of goes back if we talk about, the anti-vaxxers. Here's another example of why science works. I don't know what to say. 28,000 people have been infected and 11,000 have died in 2 years.
From Ebola?
From Ebola. Yeah. That's why this is so important. And especially if we look at other, countries, third world countries that don't have the means to take care of some of this stuff. This right here will help create an atmosphere where these people can start thriving. And if we look at adaptation, certain things you just can't adapt to. Look at the Black Plague. It wiped out half of Europe. You don't adapt to that. That's not an adaptation anymore. And kind of the same thing with Ebola. In some of these countries, the virus is spreading faster than people are able to build up immunizations, and actually natural resistance to this virus.
That was really, really, really want to find it because that was something that I had read about Ebola because years ago I decided I was curious about really deadly viruses. And one of the reasons why Ebola hasn't been able to kind of, do a lot of damage in the grand scheme is because I think it was basically that it would burn itself out. It would, some of the more lethal outbreaks where you would have such a high epidemic rate, basically people would die before they had a chance to spread it, which is part of the reason why it hasn't really kind of gone across the globe and done that. I just wish I could find where I found that. I think it was a Wikipedia hole I fell into, but.
Well, and the people that get it mostly in Africa that are the poorest people are not traveling outside their country. It's like it's very localized.
Mm-hmm.
If it broke out like that in a country that had international travel, we got a real problem.
Exactly.
That was one of the reasons why they were worrying so much about the doctors that brought it into the States. I think they sent them up to Wisconsin, maybe one of the Dakotas. I know it was a northern state where they have a facility specifically designed to handle Ebola, and it's like it's the peak medical center for that, and those kinds of things. You have to have it. Yeah, you have to have something like that, and like you said, when it comes to transitioning for how much travel you have, it's one of the reasons why some of the diseases like the flu is able to spread so much is because it gets into the logistics we had talked about earlier. But it always reminds me, one of the things that people don't really pay attention to this kind of story is thinking back to the Conrad's Heart of Darkness, King Leopold and killing 10 to 100 million Congolese people in the ivory trade and things like that. Like, these are things, and these are people that people in the modernized, industrialized world know they exist. They expect to be able to gather the resources from these people to take whatever wealth is in these countries and basically give them a small piece of money, mostly just a couple of people in the country, as opposed to spreading that money around the country, and take those resources and bring them into the U.S. We know those people exist, but other than that, if they have a major medical problem, unless there's a chance it's coming here, it's out of sight, out of mind. It really is.
Most definitely.
Well, it's almost like that's part of the benefit of all these third world countries having these resources that you can exploit.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really think that it's cool. This is an example, probably of a very small group of people, probably funded by a couple of very, very rich people, something like the Bill Gates Foundation, whatever, and they're able to create a vaccine. They have enough medical funding to research and create a vaccine to do this, because let's face it, Pfizer isn't making this. vaccine because they would be charging it's like the South Park episode where they figure out the cure to HIV/AIDS was to directly inject $4.6 million into your bloodstream, and then they were like, they just flew to Africa and told some kids that, like, just inject American dollars into your blood. It's solved. It's cured. Like Pfizer would obviously be like, hey, we've got this disease cure. We're gonna charge $100,000, per dose. One of the things, my new healthcare plan that my company has, they're like, you have to get in the special plan for the drugs that cost $30,000 per refill. Like there are diseases, I'm not familiar with which ones they are, but they're $30,000-$50,000. You get it 3 or 4 times a year. Like you hit your deductible on the first try. But like it's nice to see that this seems to have a direct route, some humanitarian or altruistic route to those people.
You also hit bankruptcy line with those types of fees for pharmaceuticals. Fuck.
Yeah. So if we go to the article, it actually says there's this guy named Jack Rose at Yale University, and he essentially developed an effective delivery system to safely expose the immune system to pathogens for the purpose of vaccination. So if we think about it, if you look at, a lot of anti-vaxxers are like, well, you're just introducing this crazy drug to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're just giving me some of this virus mixed with a bunch of chemicals I hate. And the funny thing is that it's technically true, right? To some extent. They're giving a small amount of that virus to you. But yeah, you're right. It's neutered. It's a neutered, illness. And the thrilling thing, right, about this is because it's finally been, licensed and it's going to be able to be distributed. And the reason we don't hear about it is because Americans didn't do a damn thing about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We send people over there to fix things, but
don't bring them.
We don't care unless we get to take credit.
Well, the only time you'll hear about this would be like the end of like a local news thing when it's like, hey, when they do that quirky little end of the day's news thing. It's like, hey, they've got a new thing, a new vaccine for Ebola. Nah. And then I was like, let's go to Bill's wacky sports things to end the show. Like that's how much you get. I don't know. I really like the fact that they're using this, and this is a great example of it says colleagues in his lab genetically modified vesicular stomatitis virus that infects the livestock but doesn't cause illness in people. So you're using essentially evolutionary terminology. They're using Ebola partition. So like if you look at the human genome, we're made up of huge swaths of virus genetic material that's been turned off, and so like this kind of stuff, you put it into our bodies, and the one that only affects livestock, but it doesn't kill people, and they've been able to modify it so that it can essentially be a base for the human vaccine. These are things with direct proof, but this is evidence that I don't understand how people don't see as a good piece of evidence for why evolution is true and why vaccines work. This.
You're talking too much sense, Hannah.
I think that's what it is. And that could be the other thing is that, Sinclair media and a lot of the major media people, like, they don't like to talk about this stuff because as soon as you say the vaccine word, people just start yelling at their TV. Like, no.
Yes.
Not for you.
All the yes.
Yes. More yeses. No. The presidential administration says vaccines are... What are they? They cause cancer now. Windmills cause cancer. Vaccines cause cancer.
Wind.
Oh, yes. Wind is causing cancer. That's right. I forgot about that.
Wind.
The birds.
I saw eagles everywhere on the ground. Is just disgusting, people. These socials kill all the bald eagles with their windmills and their wheeze. Oh, my God. Sorry.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So I thought it was just, like I said, I thought it was I think it was an interesting, proposal, right? It was an interesting discussion. I don't know. I get excited by these, these different things because, A, it shows medical advancement. B, it demonstrates the evolutionary process. And then C, it gets to help a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Why is this being...
If they can afford it.
If they can afford it. Well, now they can. And that's the funny thing. If you go to that article, at the bottom of that article, it says this specific company refused to do anything with it, essentially, some like new genetics. And they didn't do anything with it. And it was just this, fuck all, because they just let it sit there, stew, and didn't do a damn thing about it.
Back to rated R.
Hey, you ruined it.
Go with it.
Between stumpily, guys' penis and Boyce's, fuck words.
F-bomb?
So, I don't know.
Big one. Yeah.
Oh, guys.
Yeah, and we're about to get into another discussion. And this is the crux. So Hannah, this is the new segment we started last week, where we're going to dissect the policies of each of the candidates every week till we exhaust them, and then we'll decide if we want to go back and do it again. But last week we went through Andrew Yang, and I purposely held out Bernie and Elizabeth just till you came back, just so that way you could be part of it. And it's kind of funny because I was on Boyce's show this afternoon, and all of his Yang Gang people, man, they were definitely coming strong for that Bernie shit, man. Except for them, finally, half of them had to admit, well, I don't like he's a socialist, but if we could get his policies without, the government being involved, and it's like, oh my God, so we're all on the same page, folks. Just you want to get there in a different method than I do.
It blows my mind when people are like that closed-minded, like Bernie and Andrew actually want the same thing. They just have a different method of getting there. That's it.
Well, and one of your commenters was like, yeah, Bernie's a socialist and Andrew Yang is not. And I'm like, okay,
Stop it.
Here is the episode. Let me go through. Let's dissect this because we already did this. We did this last week, guys. We already did this where we had the conversation. Is Andrew Yang somewhat of a socialist? And he is.
UBI.
The United States government.
How he's going to pay for it? I don't know how to tell these people. I felt like almost asking you if we could stop and just play the episode for them.
No shit.
At that point, just say, here, everybody just listen to this. We already did this. We've done this once before.
Don't be a fool. Don't do it.
I don't know. Anyway, so hopefully people will tune into our show from last week so they can catch up on all the Andrew Yang stuff. But this week we're going to examine Biden's policies.
Mr. Bloodshot himself.
Yep. And it was funny because you had somebody else on your channel too say, is this going to be a 5-minute segment? And I can't promise it won't be. I can't promise it won't be. But we'll try.
His policies are referred to Obama's policies in 2008, please. Thank you.
Exactly. Oh, I don't know. And if you have any hate mail, see the number at the bottom of the screen. Please send buddythelumberjack@gmail.com. All hate mail. He'll be happy to answer all your questions.
So whoever owns that is going to be so upset if they get all these really random socialist yelling things. Like, why are people mad?
So funny story. I own that email address now. It was available. I got it, and it also has its own. It has its own Twitter account now.
Oh,
so follow @BuddyLumberjack.
This is historic.
I have one tweet so far, and it is this episode.
Outstanding.
there you go.
It is.
You see it right here, folks. @BuddyLumberjack. That's crazy.
Tweet away.
Oh, I don't know. Anyway, so we wanted to talk about Joe Biden's policies, and again, I can't guarantee we're going to go into as much as we can. We're going to. So here, let me share the screen a minute. I'm going to share the screen because you're all going to probably poop your pants because
it's an explicit episode. You might as well bring the poop in your pants back on.
You
Good
can
Lord.
sit here and see. Look at his. This is his opening thing. Not only does he look like a whore, he looks horrible in that picture.
He looks like a whore. Oh, but I'm in trouble
Horrible.
for saying the penis word.
Oh my God. Our best days still lie ahead.
While they last.
I have spoken.
Sorry, Joe.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yep. And his headline is Donald Trump should be impeached. Contribute to our Beat the Trump fund to get him out of the White House. Right? I'm clicking on it. Oh, if you want to donate to beat Trump to get him out of the White House, you donate to his campaign.
Exactly.
So it's not even like a GoFundMe or like a campaign that's going to donate to getting him impeached. It's donate to him.
Give me money.
What else is he going to do?
That it's Orange Man Bad syndrome. That's all he's got. Orange Man Bad, while he continues to get more orange.
And I guess I won't disagree with him to some extent, right? And say, hey, maybe he has, maybe he actually has some good he's done before. And that's fine.
I would say most of the stuff that he did that was good was stuff that he was forced to do while he was the vice president of a more liberal person than he is. Because if you look at his actual congressional past, I mean, he is the guy who was basically talking a whole bunch of crap to Anita Hill. Like he's not that. Yeah. I mean, he would be somebody that, like, in today's terms, if they saw the young people. Today, young people saw him when he was 35, 40 years old, just starting out. They would call him a centrist or even center right. Like he's not progressive, and his history shows it.
Well, he fought for the war in Iraq.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like he demanded it almost.
Yeah. So I mean, his perspectives and his past don't particularly line up with what we would call he would be like what a lot of people would call a neoliberal. So he would be in Hillary Clinton camp, directly down the middle, leaning center right. Yeah, or that too. I mean, they can be interchanged, but yeah. So yeah. I mean, his policies are, what's on here is going to be kind of the perspective that we all have, is that we're going to vote blue no matter who in most cases here, because I mean we all as much as swallowing your own pride for dealing with who you really want in the primary, once that's done, it's a big deal. And so, like, if it came to it, he's got my vote, but it's not going to be in the primary without even remotely. But like that kind of thing, like he's already on that page. He's just assuming that's what people are going to do, and they're just going to go with votability or name recognition or whatever. And if that's the game you want to play,
win just for winning's sake, that's all it is.
Yeah. I don't think they give young people and voters enough confidence. They don't give them enough respect. Like, we are capable of looking into policy and really, like, breaking it down, and instead of just the what was it Christopher Hitchens said, the hopey changey. He said that I can't remember how the quote goes. Yeah, it's basically like, one day we can hope for change that'll truly make a difference in the lives of Americans, or something like that. It's just like complete and total nothing is said in that sentence. That is what he is. His website here is essentially marketing keywords.
That's it.
So let's look at one of his first ones. He has a plan to invest in middle class competitiveness. And I don't like that every time I scroll down, this stupid Support Joe visual comes up. That drives me nuts.
It's called marketing. It's capitalism light.
And it's probably a one-click thing. If you accidentally click on it, it'll like automatically download from whatever credit card you've accidentally installed into the Google mainframe.
Yeah. But he's got such diversity behind him. There's two black people and a random white woman staring off into the distance who support Joe.
Oh, I'm not even. I'm just seeing the share
Joe
page.
What saddens me is that his little "Let's Go Joe" 3-syllable chant, that seems to be the best way to get elected, is to have like a simple 3-word chant.
Feel the burn.
Simple. I like how he's getting rid of the E. It's Joe. J-O.
I know.
I think he might be making a JoJo reference.
Oh.
Joey. Well, my dad said, Joey, you can do this.
Damn it, Joe.
Well, he's using he's using the bars for the E. So.
Oh, you're right. I missed that. Anyway, so he has a plan to do 1.3 trillion over 10 years to equip the American middle class to compete and win in the global economy to move the U.S. to net zero greenhouse gas emissions and ensure that city, towns, and rural areas across the country share in that growth.
What the? So the middle class isn't winning enough.
Not according to him.
Huh.
So he talks about how Trump has issuing infrastructure weeks. I don't know what that means. I've honestly never once heard of that. But here's what he's going to do. He wants to create good union jobs that expand the middle class. All right, so that's kind of fair. Union jobs have been, something that has been removed from our society over the course of the last 30 years. It's just gone downhill.
As far as I know, they're at 7.5% of the total workforce right now, which is down from 20 something.
That's huge.
Yeah, I think it's got to be. Yeah, it's down 20 or 30%. We'd have to look at that number. But he's going to build a plan to strengthen the worker organizing, collective bargaining, and union. He's going to propose infrastructure legislation that incorporates labor provisions contained in Senator McNally's Good Jobs for the 21st Century Energy Act.
Wow.
So go ahead.
I just going to say that some of the things that we're talking about here is he's saying that he's going to create union jobs. He's going to create infrastructure jobs. Most of his investors, major investors, are directly working against any kind of unionization at their workplaces. These really, really, really big companies that are donating a lot to him. I mean, he is getting the business class of the Democratic Party is donating to him. They are not going to support these kinds of things. Like, they don't want unionized workforces. They just don't. This is not a perk for them. So they don't want that. So Joe Biden's not going to go against his donors for that. So he's not going to strengthen the union classes. And then if he does that, what's he going to do if we're creating zero net carbon emission? We're going to be taking money from the fossil fuel industry and the current existing infrastructure for energy that exists right now. So all the major monopolistic companies that own all of our energy, they're donating to him too. Like, it's one of those things that he's going to say he wants to make those changes, but it'll get flagged down and it'll get stomped right on out because the Democrats aren't going to vote against big business. They just won't. That's one of the reasons why Bernie and Yang and a lot of those guys have been saying that they don't want that big giant donor class making decisions for them. This Biden lets them make those decisions, so I can't trust him when he says that he's going to strengthen the middle class because that's against what his donors are saying they want.
Yeah. And that's the thing here. He claims a little bit farther below that he's going to jumpstart the repair of highway, roads, and bridges. And I'm sitting here thinking, hold on a second. Every person has done this. They've invested a lot of money into our infrastructure.
Well, they said they would.
Yeah, and think about Michigan. We still got a lot of potholes. I have a Waze app or Waz app or however the hell you say that I use when I go back to. There's a debate about that. There's a whole debate. Anyway. I use it, and people now put potholes on there. So I get an alert saying there's a pothole coming up, and it's like
everybody's driving and texting, updating their ways. Watch out for the pothole on I-96. Wham! They run over 6 kids walking across the street.
Well, you're not. If kids are walking across the highway, we've got a problem.
Okay, maybe.
We got a big problem.
They exit off the highway like, okay, I'm off the highway. I can update my app. Bam! Grandma's down.
No, you could. It's a 2-button click, man.
Why grandma?
So he wants to make America's road the world's safest. The safest roads
platitudes.
By promoting highway safety improvement program.
What does that mean?
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
I'm waiting for substance.
We could easily do it. We'll just have to cut a bunch of funding from the defense budget. Yeah, it's not going to happen either.
Yeah, not happening.
They've talked about ending world hunger and the billions of dollars it would cost and fixing the infrastructure, billions, trillions of dollars that would cost. I mean, it wouldn't be that much if you took whatever you plan on, so $130 million a year for or $130 billion a year. We've got 750 plus going to defense. I mean, let's take 10% of that.
So this is what he's talking about. And this is literally the link. I clicked on the link in his thing. He will work with Congress to increase federal funding for key safety initiatives like the Highway Safety Improvement Program. So you can see here's all the different resources. They're supposedly creating a strategic way to improve highway safety. So you can see the little picture in the corner. It's got the rumble strips and the little yellow mark on it.
That makes me feel safe.
That yellow mark makes union jobs, brother.
Yep. and which is fine, right? I mean, that's again, we can go back to, is that a bad thing, right? Is it a bad thing to create more union jobs?
No.
To improve the roads?
No.
I don't disagree with it, but it's just kind of weird because that's one of his top 3, things that show up on his website.
Mm-hmm. I do have to make a quick complaint about the graphic they used. Can you go back to it?
The graphic they used?
Yeah, for that highway thing. Yeah,
the puzzle.
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't like the puzzle?
No, I have a real complaint here.
All right.
If it's a complete puzzle, it should be edge pieces, you idiot. God damn it.
No, boys, they're leaving it open for other people to intersect with them.
Yeah, that's called big business in the top right corner. And the other corner, they get to siphon funds off. Now it's complete. Cadillacs, private airplanes. There you go.
Well, my question, so like he has that, highway safety. What are we, who's going to get that job?
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? So who gets that job? Companies that are on the federal quotations list. There's only a couple companies that have the kind of infrastructure money to be able to privatize that kind of big, quote that kind of thing. There's only a couple of companies that can do that. They're large companies. And I guarantee you they have a big old honking lobbyist, and they're probably making a lot of really big decisions. So let's say this new infrastructure they want to build the roads will last longer. They've got some new technology where they rubberize it or something like what they do in Scandinavia, where they have roads that are flexible and wear out over time, and you can heat up sections and melt them back in to add back. There's all kinds of cool new technology out there. Or there's the lobbyist guy who has the sand cement mix that we've been using for years and years and years that breaks down after 6 months on the road. That guy doesn't want to change. There's resistance to change for his big giant business model that makes money every year. And there's only one other competitor and they use the same technology. How are you going to change that? You know what I mean? Like,
what do you mean the established order should be maintained? Because then it makes big, powerful people uncomfortable that they might not be big and powerful anymore if change happens.
That's
what do you mean?
That's what Biden says he's going to change that stuff. Every candidate I've ever seen says we need to rebuild the infrastructure in this country. Since John Kerry I think it was the first one I ever voted for. Like every single one of them has always said it, and there's no way to get enough people behind to. What do you do? Like what company is going to be the one that's going to be the trailblazer?
Mm-hmm.
The people that own these companies aren't looking to reinvent the wheel. They've been doing the same thing for the last 50 years and watching the concrete crack in Michigan.
They don't want to reinvent the wheel. They want to reinvest the wheel back into their pockets.
It could be. I mean, we have a global shortage of sand. Did you know that?
A global what?
Shortage of sand. It's the main ingredient necessary for making our current modern concrete. We have a global shortage of it. They're literally looking at taking, they cannot get enough of it. China put down more concrete in I think 10 years than the entire world has done collectively. Sure. It was insane the amount of resources and stuff that we're sending out that way. So all the people who own all of these companies and all that stuff have to all agree that we're going to make our infrastructure good. I would love to see it, but I just don't know if they can get enough people behind it to invest this kind of, forward thinking.
It's just platitudes.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. So let's move on to another key topic that he's been talking about, and it looks like he even has a video for us. Let's hear.
It's great being part of the first Democratic debate in Miami. The question was asked whether we support eliminating private health insurance. Some said yes. I said absolutely not. I believe we have to protect and build on Obamacare. That's why I proposed adding a public option to Obamacare as the best way to lower costs and cover everyone. I understand the appeal of Medicare for all, but folks supporting it should be clear that it means getting rid of Obamacare. And I'm not for that. I was very proud the day I stood there with Barack Obama and he signed that legislation. Never before had anyone ever been able to do that in the White House. 20 million Americans gained coverage. Over 100 million with pre-existing conditions finally got protection. And most importantly, peace of mind. You know, I know how hard it is to get that passed. I watched it. Starting over makes no sense to me at all. I knew the Republicans would do everything in their power to repeal Obamacare. They still are. But I'm surprised that so many Democrats are running on getting rid of it. The Affordable Care Act was a historic achievement for President Obama. And if I'm elected president, I'm going to do everything in my power to protect it and build on it.
I have some questions on his math.
Are you sure?
He said 20 million people are now are covered. He was within 100 million people are covered with pre-existing conditions. That don't add up.
Well, it changed. The people that have private health care and didn't go on the Affordable Care Act,
Yeah.
those insurance companies are no longer able to say no to you because of pre-existing conditions. And so the 100 million people are people who, the 20 million who didn't have it, who did have it, who then got it. And then the 100 million people who had insurance already, they could be refused because of pre-existing conditions.
Gotcha. But didn't that change anyway? Again? Well,
Yeah,
no,
it's
what Trump's trying to do, right? Remove
Yeah,
that.
when they tried to, the only thing they were successful at is removing the tax on you if you don't ever sign up for it. But everything else is basically allowed to maintain the same. They did find some people that were trying to remove their Medicare expansion. But other than that, nothing really was able to actually happen. It's one of the reasons why John McCain was able to thwart the president in one big giant hunk, because he's pretty much the one that stopped that whole thing, and they were able to push through just the fee change.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Like Biden to ride on Obama's coattails still.
No, yeah, I mean, using the name.
Yeah.
I
I'm
think-
a little concerned, just because he's kind of falling into that whole, we don't want to change things too much. We just want to keep building on the past. We want to keep just the same inefficiencies, just kind of running in the same circles. That it just sounds like he just would rather keep something that he helped put in place instead of maybe accept the fact that there are flaws that might be better made to just completely pull it back and then put something better in place. Like, am I wrong in thinking that?
No, it's the investment fallacy. The sunk investment fallacy. Yeah, it's basically, we've invested so much time in it, political capital and everything. It was a really hard thing to win, and it was won essentially by one party. It was just like they did some of that stuff. So I don't know. We'll see what happens there. Incrementalism versus revolution. That's kind of where the Democrats are fighting right now, is whether or not they want to choose one or the other. The Republicans have been essentially coalesced into one, what I like to call the same place or organized religion has been going in this country. Is they've been going to a smaller and smaller but louder and louder space. I think the Republicans are easier unified because they are a smaller group ideologically. The Democrats have so much variety and so many different kinds of people. It's really hard to get everyone on page. And so this is one of the things, is whether or not we're going to support incrementalism or if revolution is the name of the game.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. And that's, going back to, if you go back to his page, right, and you look at what it says, it's insane to think that what has happened is really working for everyone, right? He can make fun of all he wants, all the Democrats that don't want Obamacare anymore or the Affordable Care Act. But I mean, Hannah, you were a small business owner. You weren't like some multi-billion-dollar, or even you weren't even a multi-million-dollar organization. You had to provide health insurance for your family. Tell us exactly how affordable it was for you.
I got a $400 a month subsidy. It went from $1,000 a month to $600 roughly, and we went through the Affordable Care Act. It was the cheapest option, and the coverage was decent. But I mean, $400 a month subsidy is so that $400 a month subsidy. Everybody likes to think that that's $400 off of my healthcare. No, the insurance company is still charging $1,000. The government is paying the insurance companies $400 a month for essentially $100 per person in my family. If you think about that, that is the closest thing to government socialism, corporate socialism. That if you look into any of the other areas where major giant corporations and companies are getting huge handouts from the government, that is what this is. To me, this is a funneling of taxpayer money directly into the insurance companies. It's awesome that we have no pre-existing conditions and that people are able to get really good low-cost plans and get huge subsidies when they're really low income. But we're taking the same money that is overpriced, inflated, and ridiculous, and we're just, instead of making private people pay that, we're making them pay part of it, and then the government is taking the rest of the bill and just sending it to private corporations. Like you could remove one big thing in the middle of that and just have the government use that money to directly fund the healthcare through hospitals and doctors, and you remove a huge pile of people who are just doing what?
Yeah,
that's what I've always asked. They take care of the paperwork, I guess.
They're bloodletting,
but yeah. So that's what I see on that.
Yeah. Well, and again, let's dissect his plan. Like, I mean, he has a lot of information in here, but you're right. The big thing is, I don't see anywhere in here anything other than tax cuts, premium tax cuts, this, and that. The Biden plan will stop surprise billing. Okay, great. Here's the one thing that we could talk about that, this is where Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have kind of come in, right? They're going to tackle concentration across the healthcare system, the conception of our healthcare system, folks. The concentration of market power in the hands of a few corporations is occurring throughout our healthcare system, and this lack of competition is driving prices up. They're going to aggressively use its existing antitrust authority to address the problem. How? Tell me how. How are you going to do this? Because to me, this isn't saying anything. Elizabeth Warren exactly told us who she's going to tax, where they're going to tax, how they're going to tax, those different types of things. I don't see this coming out of here. I could be wrong, but you tell me in here, where in Christ's green earth do you see it saying we're going to limit the expenses that the hospitals are putting in? We're going to tell them that these are no longer profit centers. I don't see that.
I think the only way that those prices are going to come down, and this is just because I watched that Adam Ruins Everything video about insurance, is the whole private insurance industry is part of the problem with why medical costs are so astronomically high. Is just because instead of billing, like $5-10 for just simple things, they have to bill hundreds of dollars for those in order to justify making a claim. And that's absolutely unacceptable. Like, that's just capitalism running amok, and really trying to limit access to things, because now all of a sudden simple procedures cost a lot more than they need to, and maybe you're not going to qualify for that because of how much the insurance company would have to pay for it. So they're going to write in loopholes so that they can get out of paying for that. And I'm starting to really maybe it's a conspiratorial bend, but think that maybe part of the problem is the fact that these private insurance companies have had such an influence on markets for so long that they've basically kind of set the stage, and the only way to really move past that is to burn that stage down, and we don't need no water.
Exactly. And look here it says they're going to repeal the outrageous exemptions for drug corporations to avoid negotiating with Medicare over drug prices. I think that's great. But the problem becomes is if this doesn't extend, so this plan is not Medicare for all. This plan is the Affordable Care Act, and Hannah wasn't on Medicare, so I get that this will be great for Medicare, and this will allow for Medicare to not have to worry about arguing with drug corporations. But it would be simple if we just came in and said, "Hey, this is part of a quality of life issue. This is what you can make on it. This is what we're willing to pay for it. This is what we're willing to do." And this is where capitalism starts to fail. And it's kind of funny because we'll say this, and I'm sure people will be sending buddythelumberjack@gmail.com, folks, because we all know
I cannot wait.
that has to be where you send your hate mail. But the difference is people are going to complain about this. People don't like to hear that, we need government interference. I was on Boyce's show today, And that was kind of that came up in the comments, like, well, we don't want the government to do this. This is what Andrew Yang stands for. But he doesn't, actually. If you read his universal healthcare proposals, I disagree with him that they should have an open market, but he still wants to put limitations in there. There's these big limitations that are going to come in because of this. And who do you think sets the limitations? It won't be the fucking market, folks. It's not going to be some big market. So at least here, Biden is agreeing that they're going to start limiting drug companies from being able to make billions of dollars off of drugs that will save us.
He says he's going to use antitrust law. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Sherman Act in 1890s, where they created the antitrust laws. They did that specifically to stop Standard Oil from doing what it was doing. The Rockefellers, how they built their money, and the way that they created that was essentially to stop them from monopolizing and from becoming so big that what Standard Oil used to do is they would say, I want to buy your company. And if they said, no, I'm not going to let you buy my company, then they would flood the market in that area with such underfunded oil that cheap oil that the competitor would literally have to go out of business because they couldn't cut their cost to do that. That was essentially monopolizing and taking over the market. Well, what we saw during the first peak of using the antitrust laws, they actually used them for things like this. And then over time, they started to believe that they were using antitrust laws too aggressively. And so in the last 30 or 40 years, essentially the Reaganomics era, they have essentially stopped using antitrust laws in anything since the last big one was Microsoft, when they forced them to split up. But now, since the Great Recession that we had recently, everybody is so terrified to try to do anything to a big company, to a big business, that they won't actually do anything with antitrust. When's the last time you heard of a major antitrust lawsuit? I haven't heard one. It's seen one since Microsoft. I mean, Google, Amazon, all of these companies are, without question, past and beyond the ability to manipulate and total control certain markets in the country. And but the problem is globalization. If you do that, can they move to another country? So they're scared to have that capital leave the U.S. The reason I'm saying this is because insurance companies are the same way. They are so big that they can essentially just drive out small competitive companies. And the United States is not going to use antitrust law. Joe Biden will not use antitrust law against insurance companies. They'll say it'll hurt the economy. You're going to stifle the economy. American medical is the greatest medical in the world. They like to tell themselves that, but in the end, they won't use this. They will not be able to use antitrust law against insurance companies because we've stopped doing that in this country. We're so scared to cause another recession. It's plain and simple.
And that's
exactly
Warren's whole approach to Facebook and Amazon and all that stuff too, is to use antitrust to break them up, right?
Yeah, but I mean, who's running the CPB now? The CFPB, the Consumer Protection Bureau, CFPB, whatever it was. I think they have like less than 10 cases that they brought forth to protect consumers for like people that used to do stuff like what are the cash for your credit check places or whatever, like that kind of stuff. All of those types of things, like there's no protection for consumers anymore like that. They don't do the protection. The whole reason that was created. So if Warren's going to be able to get that going, that's cool for the small end, but they don't enforce antitrust anywhere in this country because Congress has to do it. Like they have to get involved, and we know exactly what Republican Congress is going to do. But even if the Democratic Congress is in charge, do you remember any antitrust stuff during the Obama presidency when we had 2 of 3 houses of government? No, because they love big businesses too. Like it's plain and simple.
Like big bug donors.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. They're not going to go against those people.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. But here Biden's telling us that he's going to reward work, not well. He's essentially saying he's going to reverse the tax cuts from Trump. He's going to eliminate special tax breaks that reward special interest. And he's going to get rid of capital gains loopholes for multimillionaires. Not very intuitive. There's not actually policy that goes into this. He's just claiming that's what he's going to do. So we have to be honest though and say, hey, him doing this, that's not a bad thing, is it? I mean, where's the skepticism in this one?
I don't think he can get it passed. I just don't think they can pass that.
But again, it's not about what he can get passed or not passed. The difference is what he's committed to working for. Or are you saying that he's committing to this because he knows it doesn't fucking matter in the long run? Because in the long run, he'll never be held accountable to it because he can just go, it was the Republicans.
That's kind of what it is. I just think he can. It'd be like saying, like, I want to give everyone 40 acres of land and a mule. Right? Like, if you wanted to distribute that kind of wealth back to the people, to give everyone land, think about that. Give everyone in the country a certain chunk of land. You would have actual physical wealth as opposed to, a checking account and have to pay money for rent. Like, if you gave someone legitimate physical wealth, he could say that. He'd say, I'm going to give everyone 50% of their mortgage up to 20 grand or something like that, whatever. Like, that would be an amazing thing because make people who will never actually be homeowners in their entire lives, to give them a chance to get started on fiscal, growth. That would be a world, that would be country changing. But he can say he wants to do that, but it'll never happen with the way that the infrastructure is built. So that's why I think that's why he says he'll do that.
Okay, but Bernie says similar things, and would we say the same thing about Bernie? I mean, are we going to say, hey, he's just putting something out there as a tactic to have that conversation, to say, hey, look at me, but it doesn't matter? I mean, let's be serious. Let's be realistic here. And I'm not trying to play devil's advocate, but I am to some extent. And I'm saying is, if we're going to be critical of Biden, we should be critical of every other fucking candidate, period. No questions. That the whole point of this segment is to dissect it. And we have to at least at some point take certain things at face level. And yes, I don't like Biden at all, really.
I think the difference is how hard. So, like, Warren and I don't know if Yang would go hard into that general direction or not, but Warren and Sanders, I know for certain, like, they would burn their presidency to the ground for those kinds of things. I don't know if Biden would work that hard. That's kind of the way I see it. Like, they would go down with the ship. If they would stake their presidency, if they were president, they would stake their presidency on something like that. I think Biden would say he would, but he wouldn't. I don't think he has that kind of integrity.
And all I ask is that I get it. And all I ask is that we just come through with facts. That's all, And if you, like, for example, look at his next one. And maybe this kind of proves your point to some extent, Hannah, right? His next point he talks about is a humane immigration policy. But if you go 3/4 of the way down, he talks about an Obama-Biden administration and immigration. And I want to say, stop.
I got a problem with that.
Stop living in the past, man.
Yeah. Well, no.
That he was the porter in chief, man.
Yeah. Hold on a second. Obama was not very good about integration, yet he didn't put anybody in camps. I get that. And he hasn't made anybody sleep on the floor. I get that. But he wasn't like some revolutionary when it comes to immigration. And it's, again, going back to, I was on Boyce's show this morning, and we talked about this a little bit, and it was showing up in the comments. They were talking about, immigration and, well, Bernie's a socialist and he just wants open borders. Well, yeah, he does and he doesn't. He doesn't want open borders. He just wants humane treatment for those that want to come into to here. And I don't care what anybody says, but when you look at that and you look at how all those things go, Bernie has a pretty comprehensive plan, which we'll get into, 3 episodes down the road, at, what his immigration policy is. But my problem here is, and maybe this goes back to your point, Hannah, he's pointing out that we shouldn't take children away from their parents. Great. Got it. Good. The root cause of migration that pushes people to leave behind their homes and everything they know to undertake this dangerous journey for a better chance at life is something they understand.
Life.
Yeah. And at the same time, we must not forget that immigration is the reason the United States is good. But now tell me how that's going to work. What's going to happen from this? There's no substance here. This is a purely non-substance discussion. I don't care what anybody says. There's no substance to this.
There aren't any even skeletal inclinations of actual policy.
It's a mollusk.
A mollusk? Is that what you said?
A mollusk policy. All gooey.
Yeah. And I think even Canada has more immigration policies than this guy's offering. Because I've tried to get to Canada. It hasn't worked very well for me so far. I need somebody to vouch for me.
Trying to pole vault over the bloody border. It's not how that works, Tanner. You know this by now.
You just go in the tunnel in Detroit, bro. It's easy.
Yeah, they send me back quite fast if I say, hey, I'm going to come live here. They're like, no, you're not. You're white, male, and American. Get out.
Yeah, well, we've kind of got enough white males here.
Boys.
We've kind of diluted the market.
But you have better healthcare than we have.
I mean, yeah, we definitely do. We have access to this glorious bit of healthcare that is the difference, literally the difference between life and death, is called preventative medicine, where if I start to get sick, I can go talk to a doctor. I can go see a doctor.
Instead of trying to cure cancer in the 4th stage.
Yeah. Instead of having to wait until I'm dying to go get help.
Mhm.
And then going bankrupt because I can't afford to pay the astronomical bill. So yeah, I mean, as much as I have issues with the Canadian healthcare system, I got to admit I am absolutely grateful for that, because I can go to the hospital and not get charged. It's great.
Yeah, I actually had an Australian on the other day talking about the Australian healthcare system as it pertains to the VAT, to the VAT, because he's a business owner and a consumer. So I said, how does the VAT apply to your business? How does the VAT apply to you as a consumer? And how does that translate over to financing their healthcare system? Because that's what they've done. They use the VAT to help fund their healthcare. And he just broke it down. He goes, I'd rather pay another $1 for a $20, and just as a scenario, just buy a $20 shirt. If it costs $21, I get free healthcare. I'm in. It seems pretty obvious. And he says that he goes to the hospital, like you're saying, buddy, it's just not, it's a non-factor. You go in, you get taken care of, and you leave. And I think he said he paid like $1.60 for his medications for 30 days. And it's just,
yeah, because they limit things. Yep. They limit things there that we don't have limitations here on. Exactly. And boys, I'll chide you a little bit, or I'll fire some shots, because Yang, to some extent, wants that free open market for healthcare. I mean, he says he's going to restrict things, but he also says it's going to be this open market, and he thinks by restricting things and then creating an open market, it'll move everybody to government, healthcare. And
yeah, his premise is, he starts out by saying, I agree with Bernie, period. We do need single payer. And his path to get there, because Bernie's is lower it to 55, 45, 35, then -9 months. I think it's a 4-year timeline he has as his policy. And Yang is saying, I have a similar end goal, but a different way of getting there is giving everyone the public option to take Medicare, and then incentivize Congress to make Medicare as competitive as possible to drive down, to help control the costs with competition, I guess you'd say. And then if I have insurance through the hospital I work at, and it's like $500 a month and $3,500 out of pocket a year for my family, it's like not having insurance, pretty much, unless someone goes and has cancer or a surgery. So if Medicare for all came out with a public option, but the Medicare plan was better than the one I have at the hospital, I'm opting out of my private one. I'm taking Medicare. I think that will help small businesses say, you know what, we don't have to incorporate that cost into our business model, where that's always going up. Healthcare costs always go up because Chris, I think Hanna knows this more than anybody, that you have to pay more as the employer versus and I guess Tanner too, you know that.
We had that discussion last week, buddy.
Respect.
No, I'm buddy.
All right, we had a mathematician. We had the same conversation last week.
Yeah, so the idea is to use the open market competition to make it as competitive as possible, and to negotiate costs for prescription drugs.
Gloves. We need prescription gloves, especially for the penis handlers.
Did you suck your thumb?
Only the lightsaber penises.
There you go. See? There it is. I need a little clip of that. The lightsaber penises.
The lightsaber penis.
But boys, again, it's this discussion we had last week, and I'll be honest, I talked with somebody in my office about this, right? We do pay all this money per employee when we have health insurance and taxes. Mm-hmm. And I'll challenge you the same way to say, hey, go back. I want to talk to somebody in the Andrew Yang camp. I don't need him If you get him on the show, that'd be awesome. But
Yeah.
like, let's get somebody from the camp on to have that conversation, because I want to know what the hell happens to the taxation for businesses. Because by what you're saying and what could happen is if they people stop opting out, companies pay less money in taxes. They're losing money. The government is.
Right. Yeah.
And-
Like I said before, I just don't know enough about that for sure. I don't know who the hell even go approach on that one, but it's a great.
It's interesting. I find it interesting that basically Yang's perspective on this is essentially to let the market, a real, actual free market, dictate and allow the government to be an acting party in a market, in a real market, which is funny because that's what the Republicans like to say they do. They want the government's hands out of the government, but in the end, when you hear a lot of things where they're actually trying to use the government to regulate and control said government. So this is an interesting area where Yang's perspectives could really probably tie into a lot of the independent and a lot of the libertarians on the conservative side, where they would be very, very comfortable letting a free market dictate as long as the government has an equal share in any kind of policy creation or market capitalization. So if the government would just be like another company who would be offering a product, and if their product is good enough, the people would choose said product for said price. And I love the idea that could potentially do that. And I think what Bernie says is that that's not going to happen. I don't think that anybody would allow that to happen. So I think that's a difference of philosophy. Elizabeth Warren is probably more in the Yang camp. Is like she likes the idea of a public option, but she has said that she wants to kind of float with Medicare for all. I don't know if she would say it. Like, I don't know if she would let her campaign burn down. I know Biden wouldn't hold that one to the end because he's obviously voting for keep what they have. So it'd be interesting to see what they do.
Well, I have very little faith in Elizabeth Warren, who is literally moving the goalposts every time the wind shifts, and she's like, well, now I think I support Bernie last month, but this month I'm going to say I'm going to do a public option for 3 years, and then we're going to pass more legislation. When you're a president, you get lucky to get one thing passed in your first term, 2 at the tops. And you're going to tell me she's going to put all of it on healthcare when she's got other things, the bigger fish to fry type of things. So I just have very little faith in her constantly changing.
I don't mind people
policies around.
I don't mind people saying that I've learned something new and I've changed my mind. That's also kind of nice, but it would be interesting to see, I guess, how hard she would ride this, because like what Biden's talking about for creating, the market, essentially using antitrust competition to lateralize everything, so spread out, money and power outward, which would be giving power to small insurance companies.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, I guess. I mean, that's making a better market, but I don't see how you're actually going to enforce that.
Exactly.
I don't either. I don't know.
What are the advantages, though, for smaller businesses that maybe can't afford a healthcare plan for their employees? Is that this is going to make it so that their available workforce, is healthier. They might pay a little bit extra in taxes, but they're not having to shell out thousands of dollars a month for a healthcare plan. Just to keep their employees safe. If, say, they've only got like a 5-person crew, one person goes out sick, well, then all of a sudden they're down 20% of that crew. And I think that's really going to stand to benefit everyone, is just making sure that, people are healthy enough that they can work. They're going to be happier.
Yeah, it promotes the idea inside of like production and manufacturing is how do we do things with the least amount of labor for the cheapest cost, right? Mm-hmm. And that ideology.
How many people do you have to have that take care of all of your employees' healthcare? Like how much? That's so much work. I saw some people that were saying that if I didn't have to do that and I can concentrate on work all the time, that would be amazing.
Exactly. Like our company's growing to the point where we almost need 2 people in HR because of this. And the idea is that you take healthcare out of it. I don't need to hire another person, at whatever HR people make. I don't know what they make, but whatever they make, you could save that money as a company. Mm-hmm. But the company I'm consulting for right now, they have 2 to 3 extra people on the line, and they claim it's because they're union, but it's not. It's because people get sick, and the union has very strict rules for what happens when people get sick. I have to be very careful. I can't share too much, but if these people get sick, they're down. So you have to hire a few more people to put on the line that you don't need, which is a lower efficiency rate, right? But if you took care of the people, you paid them, higher wages, you did all these different things, you worked towards that, and you helped invest in a system that allowed for those people to go get what they needed when they needed it, you would probably have a lot less people sick, right? Now, I think that goes into, the next point I want to bring up about Biden is he wants to talk about restoring the basic bargain for American workers, right? He wants to increase the minimum wage to $15. I don't think he's the first person that said it personally, but
Nope.
at least he's jumping on that bandwagon. I mean, at least there's that.
It's almost a requirement to run for president for the Democratic Party right now. Like, I can't think of anyone who says, no, I'm not going to support that.
It's so infuriating because that's really just another buzzword that they use to get votes. It's like, okay, we get it. We want the people at the bottom to be making more money, but that's not going to help if we don't address the problem with the people at the top who are hoarding even more of that money and then are going to try to screw over, and they're going to hack the hours away. They're going to hack other various perks that they give their employees because, suddenly we're not making enough money. Our profits are down. I mean, we're still making profits, but our profits aren't as good as they should be because now we have to pay our employees a decent amount.
I saw something on Reddit the other day. It was just an idea of the depth. Yeah, it was in between porn. It was to imagine the depth of the income inequality in this country. Is that if you were born in basically 2,000 years ago, and you were making, I think it was $26,000 an hour. If you, from that point all the way until now, for them 2,000 years, there would still be 30 people who have more money than you.
What the hell?
So, like, that's the gap. That's the size of the gap that we're talking about. So the $15 an hour, it's a buzzword. Small people who, little guys who are looking to have a living wage, to be able to afford an apartment in any country in the United States. Awesome. You're able to stay alive. This is great. But the gap between the people at the bottom and the top is so big and so intense that, like, it's cool to say that we're going to help support that a little bit, but it's small change. It's small, it's small stuff that understanding of that gap and that difference is something that philosophically, this is awesome. Great, cool. $15 an hour. But what are you going to do to help redistribute that money? Because that money used to be in the middle class. Mm-hmm. It used to be in the infrastructure in the middle class in this country, and it's now not. That's one of the reasons why we're having these problems.
Yep. And we'll get to that in a second, Hannah. I think that'll be the last one we cover for Biden once we get through these, because he talks about that. And we'll see if he can actually hold up to his word. He claims that he's also going to stop companies from classifying low-wage workers as managers to avoid and paying them overtime. I don't know how he's going to do that.
Yeah,
I agree with him. That should change because Obama, ironically enough, had a stipulation where he raised it. So, this is what it was. Before Obama got in office, there was a discussion about if you made, I think it was $38,000 or $39,000, you could get classified as a manager, and they had certain standards, and then that meant they could put you on salary, no questions asked.
Yep.
Period. Obama raised it to $47,500, and you had to be able to demonstrate, less than X amount of hours of overtime, all these other different things, and then that would allow you to get this. And if you didn't fall under those constraints, you had to be paid a hourly wage, period. No questions asked.
Or you'd be eligible for overtime, and then you have to keep track of it or whatever. I remember that, and it was a big deal. There was a lot of people that really thought that was a good thing that was going to help a lot of people who were in low income, low wage jobs that were, they deserved the extra hours they were working because they were told that we're going to fire you unless you work the extra hours, but we're not going to give you a dime more. Yeah. So essentially you're working for $9 an hour at that point.
It's you have to bleed for your company to prove how devoted you are, and it's really just part of the cult mentality that comes along with it. I remember when I was working at Safeway, which now is no longer a company that exists. It's owned by Sobeys and doesn't exist in the States anymore. They told their managers who were in their management training programs that they went to, basically, it's you're scheduled to work 48, but you're expected to work 60.
Yeah.
You know, you're scheduled for 48. You're paid for 48, but you're expected to be here for 60 hours a week at least. And it's like, at what point are you telling them that, you know, they're no longer human beings, but they're just cogs in your machine? And it's hard for me to get really critical of, you know, their douchey habits and their whole, you know, slashing hours or coming down on people when it's like they're being told that they're supposed to give it, you know, even though it's only an extra half day over a course of a week, to this company, pretty much thanklessly, because they get crap rained down on them whenever things don't go, you know, their boss's way. So I do really agree with the fact that, you know, people should be paid for the work that they do, and you know, maybe increase more union protections for managers or whatever, or stop classifying them in ways that they can't get that overtime, so they have no choice but to continue on in this cycle.
Well, if you had a union, you wouldn't need the government to intervene. That's my biggest thing. Just let people unionize. The government doesn't even get involved with like trying to make a law that applies to all businesses. Like, I don't understand how they can implement this idea.
I really don't think they could, which is why the most recent thing that they had. It's cool. I mean, this is an awesome thing to say. I mean, talk about socialism, giving the people back the wealth of their labor.
Whoa.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, this is an awesome talking point. This is something that'll go great with a lot of people who are on the fringe of the Biden camps, who would, you know, whether or not I would vote for him or not. You know, talk if it talks like a socialist and walks like a socialist. You know, those kinds of things are really important, and people have been using those tactics for a long time. Whether or not they ever actually can make them work is another story. It was party.
That's commie speak if ever I heard it, boy.
Yeah, it's just, I know we love to say that our government has functioning pieces, but as time has gone on, it really is interesting to see that those pieces only work for a couple people, and the lobbying and all that kind of stuff. That I don't see being able to mobilize enough support for a law like that to create something like that, unless it went to a referendum like they do in England, when they can bring something out to say, listen, this is going to be a majority individual vote decision. Go at it. Let's see what the people think. And we don't really have those in this country.
Exactly.
It's not a bad idea.
Maybe we have them in other countries. I don't know.
But sometimes you have weird things that happen on referendums. Like, a lot of people stay home and then they realize, oh shit, our country's on fire. Then they
or they realize Brexit's a real thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Although I will say, I have never seen ineptitude as unbelievably succinct and just in display as watching the British try to deal with whatever it is they're doing right now with Boris and all that.
Exactly. Oh, I don't know. I think we've exhausted Biden enough. I don't know. Like, and it's kind of funny. We went longer than 5 minutes. So, boys, you can go back to your crew there and tell them we went more than 5 minutes, because we did.
Point taken.
And I think it's important. I think that's what a lot of people miss, is people miss the fact that if we do not have these conversations or actually analyze the other candidates, we're no better off than somebody saying, oh, hey, my candidate's better than yours. Oh, vote Trump, or any of those things. And, you know, like, I get it. Math isn't always easy.
Either is English.
Neither is English, especially for him. But what I can say is, if we don't actually look at these other things,
that's honestly, I want to say, that's the greatest insult ever, Hannah. I loved it. That was perfect.
It's called shots fired, bro.
That was great.
Shots fired. You can send all your hate mail to buddythelumberjack@gmail.com.
Do it up.
Anyway, I feel that without the analyzation or the discussion points, we're not going to get anywhere. And that's the big thing, right? If we want to understand how to fix America, we have to have the conversations. And Boyce, the mathematician here, has created a weekly show where he's going to attempt to have conversations with others in the Democratic Party, maybe a few people outside. We don't know.
Supporters.
Yeah, and maybe I might. Maybe it might not go very well, but we're gonna try. And he's got a whole show around the design of 1 hour discussions between everybody. Everybody gets a fair share. Limit your shots fired, because I fired a few shots today, but we're going to limit them. And then we're going to be able to move on from where we're at to actually look at, hey, what does the other side think and why do you think that? And it's funny because you had a lady on today that she admitted she came very ill prepared. And she comes ill prepared. And we start talking about things, and then, she messaged you later, is like, I don't know if I can support him. I almost kind of agree with you folks there.
That's one down.
One down.
Knowledge.
One down, baby. Yeah, because people go into a candidate, they say, okay, yeah, I like who he is and what he represents, without really reading the policies.
Exactly. So anyway, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We are here every week. We're going to be starting a new thing where we do live shows, folks. So
again,
check us out on Spreaker, on YouTube. Subscribe to us if you haven't, and prepare for the revolution, because we'll be back next week. We'll be back next week with another amazing show. Thank you all, and have a good night.